Hello, I'm Frank Scruggs, and I'm about to share something pretty scary with you. I believe we're going to have a 10-foot sea level rise in the next 10 years. My exact prediction would be more like 11 feet, give or take 10 and a half feet. So we might get 20 foot of sea level rise. We might get a half a foot. But this is the science behind my feeling that this is going to happen. Um, First, the historically, uh, sea level rise is tied to global warming, and I've shown you this graph in the past where it equates to where 100 ppm difference in um, concentration of CO2 equals 400 feet difference in sea level. Now that's only a small CO2 is only like 25% of the cause of sea level change. But what made me start thinking about this was a documentary I saw on a flood of the Black Sea, and they claimed it was due to a meltwater lake bursting an ice dam in on the Laurentide ice sheet in northern uh, in the currently Canadian region. Um, there's other there's a lot of debate on which glacial lake broke. There's one that was a Siberian lake, but that's not the point. That got me thinking about um, glacial water discharges, and I think glaciers are extremely unstable. Um, I started to work on a theory I called the slushy squirt, but the idea goes that a glacier of a certain height could crush itself into a slush just with the heat of compression and motion. As it starts to crush, it would liquefy enough of the water to make a liquid slush that would flow out, a little crack or crevice, and allow the glacier to decompose itself directly down and just eat itself. So I did the math, and uh, the base of a glacier that is uh, a mile and a half high, like in Greenland, would only have 1,800 psi of pressure at the base of the ice, and this would equate with 1 foot of glacial collapse. That would only equate to um, melting 5% of the ice. The work done by the displacement over distance, you can calculate exact amounts, and it's only 5% of the ice. Not enough to make, I don't think, a fluid slushy that would squeeze out of all the cracks. So I went looking to see if there's more evidence of gigantic water outflows from glaciers, glacial discharges, and there is this valley in Washington where you could stand on top of this hill and look out, and there's several. This valley is several. I think maybe like 50 miles wide. I don't remember the number, but it has 100-foot tall ripples across the valley where a flood of water went across this area, and the flood water had to be over a couple 100 feet high and several miles wide to make this land feature of these 100-foot high ripples. And so we have evidence that rapid glacial discharges in very large quantities happen. Now, the mechanism by which it could happen is up to the imagination. And my particular imagination is that water at the bottom of the glacier, and I'll get into why we would have water at the bottom of the glacier, mixes with crushed ice from the glacier starting to move. That sets up an ice dam at the end of 1 year melt system. All the crust slush refreezes as the water drains out of it, and it resettles and makes a seal, makes an ice dam. And then the next meltwater season, you build up hydraulic fracturing pressure behind the ice dam. And then next season, the whole ice dam goes, and the water from the meltwater is multiplied by like a factor of 10 because it's crushing up ice as it goes and makes a big slushy base. And the whole glacier basically floats out on slush and slides out into the sea. And this, you get a catastrophic glacial failure. That's what I think is about ready to happen in Greenland. The Greenland ice sheet, the subglacial lakes, have filled and drained several times. So this is well, let's back page a minute and see why we have subglacial water in the first place. I mean, that's a cold place. Why doesn't the water freeze right down to the rock? Especially ice that has been there for thousands of years. It should have been exposed when it was very cold. The thing that a lot of people don't think about is 20, 30 miles underneath Greenland is how thick the crust is. And underneath that is a molten rock that is thousands of degrees. The heat transfer from the molten rock comes up from the bottom. It's like the whole thing is in a pan. Now, the melting from geothermal energy is only a fraction as much melting from sunlight on the top and from rainwater infiltration. But it's on the bottom. And if there wasn't any drainage, most glaciers would only be a mile thick of ice insulating a big tank of water. But usually that water drains off because you get a little crack, earthquake crack or some little thing, and then you have erosion, so you got this river that flows out, and it usually drains subglacial lakes. Now, the sudden deglaciation, my sudden deglaciation theory is that let me backtrack about that. Because of the heat from the bottom and the water draining, the interface between rock and water, in ice, in a glacier that is more than a mile thick, underneath that is almost always, or should almost always be, exactly at freezing. So any water poured into that system would extrude itself along the surface in a process known as hydraulic fracturing. So what we have to watch is the hydraulic fracturing pressure of the water condensing. Okay, I can see I'm getting way too complicated on this, but my theory is the water builds up, causes millions of tons of force, hydraulic force, against the ice dam, which blows the ice dam out to sea, and the whole glacier slides out with it. That is, I don't know how much of the glacier will slide and how big it will be. I think Greenland is ready for such a catastrophic glacial failure. And I think it's going to happen in the next 10 years. What I don't know is how big it's going to be, whether it's going to be just a piece of the glacier is going to break off, or whether the ice dam is going to open and just the water is going to drain out, or whether the whole thing is going to slide out to the sea. If the whole thing slides out into the sea, it's impossible to get a sea level rise just from this event greater than 20 feet. If half of it slides out in the sea, we'll get like a 10-foot sea level rise. That's why the prediction is between, was a 10-foot sea level rise in 10 years, plus or minus 9.5 feet, because it could be 19 feet, but it also could be, 6 inches. Who knows? Now, I don't like to present a problem without presenting a solution. Well, I think this is inevitable, and it's going to happen, and it's just a warning shot for what's to come. I think I was going to call this the minor slushy squirt. It is the precursor of a major slushy squirt that could happen 20 years after that, when the same thing happens in Antarctica. So what do is we prepare for it. And the way we prepare for it is to give people a place to go. And in another video, I will present Success Camp, the blessings of migration, and what we can do about this disaster coming. But basically, nature's firing a warning shot at us, and we should listen to it. If you think this kind of knowledge is important for people to hear, and you want me to keep bringing this kind of stuff, please support my GoFundMe campaign and press like on your computer. Thank you.